Welcome back. You are listening to the home of forbidden romances. Prepare yourself, because tonight's story will leave you breathless. The silk ribbon binding the velvet box on my desk wasn't ticking, but it might as well have been a bomb about to level my entire career. My heart hammered against my ribs, a frantic bird trapped in a cage of bone, as I stared at the attached note written in calligraphy so sharp it looked like it had been carved with a scalpel. A theory requires testing, Julian. Be at the manor by 8. Wear this. I didn't need to look at the sender's name to know who it was from. There was only one man in this city who commanded that kind of paralyzing dread mixed with reluctant, magnetic fascination. My boss, the CEO of Thorn Industries, the man the tabloids called the Black Widower. 3 days ago, I was just Julian Vane, the exhausted, overcaffeinated executive assistant to Magnus Thorn. I was the invisible hand that organized his schedule, filtered his calls, and, most tragically, arranged the settlements and NDAs for the families of his intended brides. Magnus Thorn was not a man. He was an event. Standing 6'4" with shoulders broad enough to carry the weight of his empire and eyes the color of a stormy sea. He was objectively perfect. But there was a darkness that clung to him, a palpable, heavy aura that sucked the air out of a room. The Thorn curse was the whisper in the break room. Every woman he engaged fell ill. Wasting diseases, sudden anemia, freak accidents that left them bedridden. The last one, Lady Isabel, had fled the engagement party coughing up blood, screaming that his shadow was trying to strangle her. I was the one who cleaned up the mess. I always was. It had been late. Too late. The office was a tomb of glass and steel, suspended high above the city lights of Neo-Viridia. Magnus was staring out the floor-to-ceiling window, a glass of amber scotch in his hand, looking like a fallen king surveying a ruined kingdom. He looked devastatingly lonely. That was my mistake. I let my guard down. I let the pity seep in. That's the fourth one, Julian, Magnus had said, his voice a low rumble that vibrated in the floorboards. Perhaps I am destined to end the Thorn line alone. Perhaps the curse is real. I was tired. My tie was loose, my hair a mess, and I had just spent 3 hours calming down a hysterical mother of the bride. The filter between my brain and my mouth had dissolved hours ago. With all due respect, sir, I had sighed, gathering the scattered papers on the conference table. Maybe it's biology. These women, they're delicate. Flowers. I looked up, locking eyes with him in the reflection of the glass. You have too much. Energy. Darkness. Whatever you want to call it. It swallows them whole. Magnus turned slowly, his gaze pinning me to the spot. And your solution, Mr. Vane? I shrugged, a reckless, delirious smile touching my lips. Maybe you need someone who isn't a flower, sir. Maybe you need a weed. Something that thrives in the dirt and the dark. I chuckled, a dry, humorless sound. Honestly, with your track record, you'd be better off with a man. Someone with a little grit. Maybe your boss needs a guy to survive him. The silence that followed was deafening. Magnus didn't laugh. He didn't fire me. He just walked toward me, stopping inches away, his scent of sandalwood and ozone overwhelming my senses. He looked at me not as an employee, but as if I were a puzzle he had just solved. A man, he repeated softly. Sturdier. It was a joke, sir, I stammered, realizing I had crossed a line. Go home, Julian. He had dismissed me, turning back to the window. I thought that was the end of it, until the box arrived. I reached out, my fingers trembling, and pulled the ribbon. The velvet lid fell back. Inside, nestled in black tissue paper, was not a suit. It wasn't a tie. It was lace. Black, intricate, French lace. A sheer, high-collared shirt with billowing sleeves, delicate as a spiderweb but constructed with the precision of armor. Beside it lay a choker of black velvet with a single, blood-red ruby pendant. It was a garment designed for a prince or a concubine. It was beautiful. It was terrifying. A theory requires testing. I should have run. I should have written a resignation letter and fled the country. But I was Julian Vane. I didn't run from fires. I walked into them to see if I could withstand the heat. And deep down, in a place I refused to acknowledge, a dark curiosity unfurled. I drove to the Thorn Manor as the sun began to bleed out of the sky, painting the horizon in bruised purples and reds. The manor was a Gothic monstrosity of stone and gargoyles, perched on a cliff overlooking the ocean. The waves crashed against the rocks below, a rhythmic violence that matched the pounding of my heart. The main doors were unlocked. The house was silent, devoid of the usual staff. The air inside was cool and smelled of old paper and rain. Library, a voice echoed from the shadows of the grand staircase. I swallowed hard, adjusting the collar of the trench coat I wore over the gift. The lace felt strange against my skin, light, yet abrasive, a constant reminder of my exposure. I entered the library. The fire was roaring, casting long, dancing shadows against the walls lined with thousands of books. Magnus sat in a high-backed leather wing chair, a book resting open on his knee. He wore a velvet smoking jacket in midnight blue, his shirt unbuttoned at the top, exposing the column of his strong throat. He looked up. His eyes were predatory, pupils dilated. He didn't look like a CEO tonight. He looked like the beast from the fairy tales, waiting for the merchant's son. "You came," he said. It wasn't a question. "I don't back down from a challenge, sir," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Drop the coat, Julian." The command was soft, but it carried the weight of an iron decree. My hands moved to the belt of my trench coat. I hesitated. This was madness. This was unprofessional. I let the coat slide off my shoulders. It hit the floor with a heavy thud. The firelight caught the sheer fabric. The black lace clung to my torso, exposing the pale skin beneath, the definition of my ribs, the slight rise and fall of my chest. The velvet choker felt tight against my throat, the ruby resting in the hollow of my neck like a drop of fresh blood. Magnus stood up. The book slid from his knee, forgotten. He moved toward me, a predator stalking prey. He didn't stop until he was looming over me, his heat radiating through the thin lace. "You were right," he murmured, his hand coming up to hover just inches from my chest. He didn't touch me, but I could feel the electricity, the static charge that seemed to perpetually surround him. The women, they felt this and withered. They felt the pressure of the atmosphere I carry, and they broke. "And me," I whispered, looking up into his eyes. I refused to look away. "Am I breaking?" "You," Magnus said, his voice dropping to a growl, "are trembling, but you are not breaking." He closed the distance. His hand landed on my waist, searing through the lace. It wasn't a gentle touch. It was possessive, heavy. "Why?" I asked, needing to bridge the gap between logic and this insanity. "Why me? Why this?" "Do not play the fool, Julian. It doesn't suit you," Magnus said, his thumb tracing the line of my hip bone. "You think I didn't notice? 5 years. You've stood in the center of my storm for 5 years. You organize my life, you clean up my disasters, you stand next to me while I emit enough dark energy to choke a lesser man. And you just hand me a coffee and tell me I'm running late." He stepped closer, his thigh brushing mine. "I tried to marry the women because I thought I had to. I thought I needed a gentle influence to balance the dark. But you were right. I don't need a flower. I need a root. I need something that can strangle back. So I'm a weed?" I managed a breathless laugh. "You are the only thing that has ever grown in my soil," he corrected. His other hand came up, fingers brushing the velvet choker. "The lace. It was a test. Submission requires trust. Wearing this, exposing yourself to me, it tells me you aren't afraid of what I am." "I am afraid," I admitted, the truth spilling out. "I'm terrified." "Good," Magnus whispered, leaning down, his lips brushing the shell of my ear. "Fear keeps the heart beating fast. It means you're alive. The others, they froze. You burn." He pulled back slightly to look at me, his expression shifting from arrogance to something painfully raw. If I kiss you, Julian, I won't stop. The curse is not magic. It's intensity. It's a need so deep it consumes everything it touches. If you can't handle it, leave. Now, walk out that door and tomorrow we go back to— Yes, sir, no, sir. I looked at him. I saw the monster the world feared. But I also saw the man who had spent a lifetime starving because everyone who sat at his table died of indigestion. I realized then that my joke hadn't been a joke at all. It had been a subconscious plea. I had been watching him for 5 years, not just as an assistant, but as a man waiting for his turn. I reached up, my hand trembling slightly, and gripped the lapels of his velvet jacket. I pulled him down. I'm not going anywhere, Magnus. The use of his first name snapped the last thread of restraint. He crushed his mouth to mine. It wasn't a kiss. It was a collision. It was hunger and desperation and 5 years of repressed longing exploding in a single second. He tasted of scotch and smoke and power. His arms wrapped around me, lifting me off the floor as if I weighed nothing. I wrapped my legs around his waist, the lace straining against my skin, the friction intoxicating. He carried me to the wing chair, sitting down and settling me on his lap without breaking the kiss. His hands were everywhere, roaming over the lace, testing the skin beneath, gripping my hair to tilt my head back. Tell me to stop, he growled against my throat, his teeth grazing the sensitive skin over my pulse. Tell me it's too much. It's not enough, I gasped, arching into him. We didn't leave the library that night. The storm raged outside, rattling the window panes, but the storm inside was far more violent. Magnus was demanding, his touch heavy and exacting, treating me with a mix of reverence and roughness that would have shattered anyone else. But I matched him. I met his demands with defiance, his hunger with my own. When he finally claimed me, marking me as his in the flickering firelight, the curse didn't manifest as sickness. It manifested as a union of shadows. I didn't wither. I didn't faint. I absorbed him. I took the weight of his darkness and I anchored it. Hours later, the fire had died down to glowing embers. I lay sprawled across his chest, the ruined lace shirt hanging off one shoulder, the velvet choker still in place. Magnus ran his fingers through my hair, his touch surprisingly gentle. You're still here, he murmured, sounding almost in awe. Told you, I mumbled sleepily, tracing a pattern on his chest. Weeds are hard to kill, he chuckled, the sound vibrating through my body. Tomorrow, I'm firing you. I stiffened, lifting my head. Excuse me, I can't have my fiancé fetching my coffee, he said, a smirk playing on his lips. It's a conflict of interest. You'll be promoted. Partner. In every sense. Fiancé. I raised an eyebrow. You haven't even proposed. And you definitely haven't given me a ring. Magnus touched the ruby at my throat. I already collared you, Julian. The ring is just a formality. I rolled my eyes, settling back down against him. You're arrogant. I'm yours, he corrected. The next morning, the tabloids went wild. No one knew who the mystery man leaving Thorn Manor was, only that he was wearing a trench coat and looking thoroughly, visibly claimed. A month later, at the annual shareholders' gala, the doors opened. The whispers stopped. Magnus Thorn walked in, looking more powerful than ever, the dark circles under his eyes gone. And on his arm, dressed not in a standard tuxedo, but in a suit with subtle black lace panels woven into the design, was me. I saw the shock on the board members' faces. I saw the confusion. But then I looked up at Magnus. He was looking down at me with a pride that bordered on worship. He squeezed my hand. Ready. Always, I said. The curse was broken. Or maybe it had just found the one vessel strong enough to contain it. The Black Widower had found his mate, and as it turned out, he didn't need a delicate flower to adorn his life. He needed the one thing that could survive the dark. And that is how the viper tamed the wolf. If you enjoyed seeing Julian prove that he's the only one strong enough to handle the boss, destroy that like button. And tell me in the comments, Would you dare to date a man with a lethal reputation if it meant a love this intense? I'll be reading your answers. Subscribe for the next chapter. Until then,